And at 10, Future Flash. The Future Flash is certainly a powerful version of Barry, but he's not really from another reality, but from an alternate future that he wants to prevent from happening, hence why he's at number 10. The Future Flash is a version of Barry Allen from the future who blamed himself for the death of Wally West. So in an effort to correct that mistake, he tries to prevent this tragedy by killing people. Yeah, he starts killing his enemies to gain enough speed to travel back in time. He starts by killing Gorilla Grodd with like a little microbomb that he phases into his head, and then eventually he kills enough people that he can travel back in time to kill one final person, himself. His goal this whole time was to travel back to before Wally dies and kill his old self, preventing any of this from happening. At least that's what he thinks is gonna happen, which is honestly a pretty awful plan if you ask me. But based on how he killed his entire rogues gallery, essentially in order to gain enough speed to travel back in time, makes him seem pretty damn powerful, and honestly, really scary. Like, if you're willing to kill another version of your past self, or whatever it is, okay, you need some therapy or something. I mean, it still sounds like a paradox to me, like I don't think you could actually kill yourself, but hey. And at 9, Kingdom Come. Wally West from Earth 22 is really powerful, but it comes with a major downfall. In the Kingdom Come universe of Earth 22, Wally West received his speed through unknown means, but nonetheless he still became the Flash, obviously. When Superman retired though, Wally kept going, but he kept going and never stopped, running from scene to scene, disaster to disaster, never taking a break. This ended up somehow just making it so that he could never stop running, having to constantly run as fast as he could, resulting in appearing to everyone as just a red blur, classic Flash style. But while this is powerful, he literally cannot stop, so there isn't really much benefit to it. However, he didn't end up killing himself or traveling back in time to kill himself, so you know what, in my books he's more powerful than Future Flash, even if he can't stop running. I mean, like, at least the cops or death can't really catch him that way, right? Like, do you think like as he gets older, like he slows down, like to a point where he shouldn't be able to stand, but he's still running as fast as like your typical 23-year-old jogger, but like he can never stop? And it ain't Mercury Flash. Mercury Flash is a robotic version of the Flash made by Dr. Tornado as a member of his Metal League. The robot uses a mercury-based physiology, whatever that means, that makes it able to somehow channel the Speed Force. I don't understand how this man not only learned about the Speed Force, but was able to replicate or siphon it using Mercury or whatever, but who cares? It's comics. It doesn't need to make sense as long as it advances the plot. First being introduced in the Multiversity Guidebook #1 in March 2015, this version of the Flash can do everything the normal Flash can do powers-wise. Because, you know, he's a robot, he can't really do, human-like activities. And has the added advantage of, you know, being a robot, so he doesn't really fear death. Not only is it not coded into him, but he also is just straight up being able, you can repair him. This version of the Flash hails from Earth 44, and honestly I kinda wish I was him. No responsibilities, only running super fast. That's the dream. And at 7, Black Flash. The actual physical representation of death for all speedsters, and honestly maybe a couple other people, but they just don't see him coming. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force. Making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2 number 138 in 1998, he was seen before the deaths of several speedsters including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. He also tried to return Wally West to the Speed Force but was unsuccessful, taking Wally's girlfriend Linda Park instead. I mean, like, based on past experiences, Wally, feel like he did you a favor. But since he was unsuccessful the first time, Black Flash returned to try to take Wally again, freezing time for everyone who didn't have a connection to the Speed Force, which is a total dick move. Like, first you take my girl, and now you're still trying to get me? Like, bro, at least give me my girl back. But thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters, including Jay Garrick, Max Mercury, and Jesse Quick, Wally was actually able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to apparently have no meaning, which I mean doesn't really make total sense because as long as someone is still living, death would still matter, but oh well. It's comics, like I said. But that didn't stop the Speed Force, because later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline, becoming the new Black Flash, until Professor Zoom took over the title after, you know, he was raised in the Blackest Night storyline. Yeah, there's been a lot of Black Flashes. And at 6, Darkseid War. What's more powerful than a speedster death? What about actual Death as a speedster? That's right, in the Dark Side of War storyline, Barry Allen becomes the host for Death, also known as the Black Racer. Through Barry, Black Racer kills Darkseid and Barry fights off Black Racer, escaping from his grasp. Barry runs away, but the Racer gives chase, staying mere inches behind him. When Black Racer catches up to Barry, he explains that he must have a tether. If he doesn't, the entire world will end and everybody will die. He shows this world to Barry, and Barry accepts the power. He has to kill someone though to let the universe continue to live. So then he appears in front of Iris. As he does, the Black Racer bursts out and tries to kill her, but Barry once again frees himself from the manifestation of death, but this time using his own weapon to kill him. Killing Black Racer seemed to be the answer, but instead, Barry Allen had freed Death. And since it no longer had a tether, it wiped everyone out. Yeah, Death isn't as cool and collected as the one from Supernatural. But luckily this was all happening inside of Barry's head, so when he comes to, he accepts the responsibility of Death and becomes in essence just the Grim Reaper, the last thing that anyone sees before they die. And honestly, that's pretty damn powerful if you ask me. And also, kind of my dream job. Halfway through and at number 5, Savitar. As a fan of the Arrowverse, I feel like I need to include one of the most interesting evil speedsters in the show. Savitar, while sharing a name with another evil speedster from the comics, is actually revealed to be a time remnant of Barry Allen in the show. Being more of a future Flash than Savitar, I mean he's kind of both. It's weird. He also didn't come back to kill Barry, he came back to kill Iris. His story is pretty messed up. In essence, making himself and having like a classic chicken and the egg scenario. Which came first, Savitar or the Time Remnant? Neither, they both kind of made each other. In the post-Flashpoint Arrowverse timeline, Savitar comes back from the future after escaping a Speed Force prison to kill Iris West before her and Barry can get married. This causes Barry to create as many Time Remnants as he possibly can because he is willing to kill himself in order to save Iris. Yeah, the Savitar kills them all because, he's a future version of Barry. He knows what's gonna happen. Except he spares one. The one he spares is gonna become Savitar because he gets shunned by the rest of the team for not being the real Barry Allen, even though he is still the real Barry Allen. Whatever. So in an act of fury and rage, the Time Remnant runs back in time, creating a new identity for himself as the first speedster and the god of speed, known as Savitar. But the suit he wears also allows him to travel at basically instantaneous speeds, and it's also existent and non-existent at the same time. And the show version of the Flash has not been able to do that at this point. He's not been able to travel basically instantaneously, even in recent seasons. And he's only visible to other speedsters. Normal people can't see him, at least while he's trapped inside the Speed Force prison. I don't think they really went over that afterwards, after he got out. But hey, whatever. And at 4, Speed Demon. Recently I wrote a list about the Amalgam universe that combined DC and Marvel characters, and the Speed Demon comes from this universe. A combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Barry Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. The demon component of Etrigan was also formerly Jay Garrick, because Night Specter stole Jay's soul, which is kind of rude because that's my thing. Anyway, the Night Specter approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his attempts to collect the souls of pure and the most corrupt, and I mean also again that sounds like a pretty sweet deal, but Blaze Allen refused. So in an attempt to persuade him, I guess in a way persuade him, at his wedding night, Night Specter stole Iris's soul, and then he asked Blaze to do it, and then he did because he wanted to get his girl back, or at least make sure that she wasn't gonna be killed or something. But I mean yeah, that's not how that works. Speed Demon also speaks only in rhymes, and whenever I do that, people get mad at me, but I don't care. This is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe fire. So, yeah. Wally West, which is an amalgam of Wally West and Danny Ketch, was also the next Speed Demon who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris back. But I mean, come on. A fire-breathing, speeding ball of fire and lightning? That sounds incredibly badass. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Godspeed. August Hart is the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash. While going after a criminal organization known as Black Hole, August was struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. So, after this, August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got his revenge on the one who he suspected to be his brother's killer. He had given up on the justice system since his brother's killer had gone free, and with his newfound power, had the ability to become judge, jury, and executioner. August realized after he had gotten his powers that he also had the ability to steal other speedsters' speed, though for a time could only do it by killing them. He practiced this skill enough to be able to do it non-lethally, but like, you know, he still was killing people. So with his new godlike speed, August was able to move so fast that he could create duplicates of himself at any given time, allowing him to give the illusion that he and Godspeed were two different people, which is pretty damn sick, considering the alternatives are Speed Mirage and Time Remnant, which aren't really the same thing. And I mean, the CW show also did kind of adapt this with all the Godspeed clones during the Godspeed War storyline, which I mean they should have went into more, but oh well. Penultimately, in at number 2, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait till you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his methods, which honestly just seems more realistic to me. Now, aside from him just, you know, quitting fighting crime. This eventually leads him to Barry, who he tries to get speed from. But Barry refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers. So Batman uses various rogues' weapons to fight him and knocks him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic, treadmill-powered Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. And then when entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce end up fusing together into a Batman with super speed, while Barry's mind was trapped inside Bruce's body. And you know, of course Bruce gets to drive. He also then gets a visit from the Batman Who Laughs, and who they try to recruit him into conquering the multiverse. Anyway, eventually he gets exposed to a large dose of positive energy, which allows Barry Allen to take control. Gotta love those positive vibes. And then he helped in the fight against the Dark Knights, but also the positive energy kills him, and Red Death explodes. Finally, in at number 1, White Lantern. While Barry Allen became a White Lantern at the end of the Blackest Night storyline, he became in essence a god. I described this in the most powerful Green Arrows list, but hot damn do these dudes have some sweet powers. They can use any color from the spectrum of light, since white light is just a combination of all the others. I'm sure you've seen the album cover, or at the very least the Eevee version of the album cover, and you know, the White Lanterns also have power over life, including the ability to duplicate their rings and resurrect people. Basically anything you think of, they can do it. It's absolutely insane. The White Lanterns are basically God, but with many different avatars. White energy blasts, force field generation, energy constructs, energy twins, ring duplication, mind alteration, wormhole generation, time travel, invisibility, resurrection, just to name a few. Yeah, it's so overpowered that I'm surprised that DC didn't just explode after that. Like, imagine you could play as like a White Lantern in Injustice, but like an actual White Lantern, not like a recolored Green Lantern. Oh.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Dawnbreaker. This version of Bruce Wayne first appeared in Dark Days The Casting, issue 1, residing in, of course, the Dark Multiverse on Earth 32. The story picks up with the usual Bruce Wayne origins. His parents are both taken out by Joe Chill that night, but here young Bruce Wayne comes into contact with a Green Lantern ring. So Bruce approaches Joe and he's pretty pissed at this point. He's going for blood right off the bat. He ended up turning Joe Chill into bones and dust. And then when Bruce met Gordon, they got off on the wrong foot initially as well. Gordon greets him and he's like, Green Lantern, wasn't sure you'd show up. And then Bruce straight up's like, hey man, don't threaten me. Really awkward vibes, just quick awkward vibes right off the bat, no friendship there. He was taking out Gotham's villains super quick. Each time he did it, he would scream and yell about how much his parents deserved to not be dead. He flew the Penguin into outer space. That's how you handle a guy right there. You take him and you go, right off planet. Okay, so with all of these brutal assassinations, the rest of the Green Lanterns knew they had to come and put a stop to this madness. Only it wasn't that easy. Bruce destroyed all of them. He executed the entire Guardians of the Universe. Beware his power, Dawnbreaker's might. Number 9, Speeding Bullets Batman. There's a name. This Elseworld storyline showed us what would happen if Kal-El's ship did not crash land in Smallville, but rather it landed in Gotham. So when the inevitable did happen and his parents were attacked and killed that night, Bruce Wayne, real named Kal-El, used his alien powers and unwillingly killed the robbers. His powers just came out in the form of heat vision. Toast. They didn't make it at all. No chance. And after this point, Bruce Wayne wasn't the same. He was ruthless. He had the powers of a god and so much anger, guilt, and pain inside. He had no idea what to do with this. So he would just repeat over and over, the bullets, the bullets, the bullets. Like he was in bad shape mentally. He hid from the world in his mansion of solitude, and he couldn't even look at photos of anything related to death as it was super triggering. And then one night, a group of robbers tried to invade said house, but again, heat vision wins this round. Didn't make it. A little older and a little wiser, Kal-El decided that now is time to use his powers to get the job done. Help out, you know, be a role model. He took up the identity of the Batman, but still, just because he rocked the cape doesn't mean he was doing all the right things. For example, when Lois Lane was kicked out of Lex Luthor's limo later on, she was about to be attacked by thugs, but Batman came in and burned their flesh while splintering their bones. Or you could fly them to jail. Or vaporize their eyes. That works too. You can vaporize their eyes. That's sure, that gets the job done. Number 8, Darkclaw. Veering out of the dark multiverse for a hot minute, we have to talk about Darkclaw. Coming from the Amalgam universe, where DC and Marvel combined powers, literally, we get a Wolverine-Batman mix. He first appeared in Legends of the Darkclaw issue 1 back in 1996, and his origin story is a hot mess. At just age 5, Logan Wayne witnessed the death of his parents. The usual stuff, but then he was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. Better bring a jacket. It's cold. His uncle too bit the bullet after poachers ambushed him. So Logan Wayne enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force when he was of age, and shortly after was submitted into the Weapon X program. So much amalgam fun. There Logan got the adamantium treatment, but the Weapon X program was terminated because it was deemed a failure. Why, you ask? Logan Wayne still retained his conscience. So where to go next but to travel the world? Logan studied abroad. He studied a variety of crime-fighting skills in his time. He studied criminology, forensics, martial arts, gymnastics, you name it. This guy learned all 127 major styles of combat. And yes, Thumb Wars is included. You never know, you never know. That mixed with Wolverine's abilities, I mean, you're screwed. Good game. Number 7, 1800s Batman. Batman Gotham by Gaslight, a tale of the Batman, written by Brian Augustin and brought to life by Mike Mignola. Here comes the tale from the Victorian era, where Batman is hunting down Jack the Ripper. So it's 1889, and while these attacks are happening over and over, the general public is starting to whisper through the winds and talk amongst themselves in the shadows that maybe, just maybe, it's Batman who is committing these crimes because, well, he's dressed like that. Pretty fair assumption. We love some Victorian drama. Let's get spooky. So we get historic killers here, we get old-timey gangs, Bruce gets framed. It's an entirely new version of Batman, but it's an older take on the Caped Crusader. To see Batman purely rely on his detective skills more than anything makes for a really enjoyable story. I mean, there's no crazy gadgets or cool Batmobile that flicks him up a building. He's just like, I got it, I'm a detective, let's do this. Steampunk Batman for the win. It got the feature film treatment in 2018 with Sam Liu directing, so if you're looking for an old-timey superhero animated flick with Jack the Ripper, there you go. Just made your day. What do you know? Number 6, Thomas Wayne. Coming from the Flashpoint storyline released back in 2011, written by Jeff Johns and Andy Kubert, Thomas Wayne, Bruce's father, was actually the one to become Batman in this timeline. Now in this universe, Bruce Wayne was the one who got shot that fateful night and he bit the bullet. The world of Flashpoint is this altered reality where Barry accidentally ends up in, where Batman is older and much more violent. And not so much as a detective like Bruce. See, what happened was, in this alternate reality, Bruce's mother, Martha, is so traumatized that she becomes the Joker. That's why during the opening credits of Batman vs Superman, we were all pumped in the theater because Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohen, two amazing actors, were in such a small opening scene as Bruce's parents, with zero dialogue. Now with recent set photos of Michael Keaton in the new Flash movie, we're still in for a great time, but we were so close to the best Flash movie with Jeffrey Dean Morgan as a dark Thomas Wayne. Jeffrey Dean Morgan did say on Twitter that ever since Zack Snyder walked away, his whole bit in that world has walked away with him. But we still got Michael Keaton, so it's still fine. It's good. It's good. Number 5. Red Death. Coming from the Dark Multiverse, Earth 52, first appearing in Dark Days the Casting issue 1, Red Death Batman used to be a hero who fought alongside Robin in his world. The events that transpired in Batman's life were taking a harder toll on him. He was watching all of these sidekicks just bite the bullet, so he was desperate to find this new power, a new way to get ahead of these horrible crimes. So he looked at his world's Flash. Batman honestly believed that he could use the Speed Force better than the Flash, so he took out all the Flash's villains, stole all their tech, and then he himself fought the Flash, and he was winning. He drove the two of them into the Speed Force because he had merged his Batmobile with the Cosmic Treadmill. That's always fun. And then that's when he absorbed all of Barry's powers. He did it. After Batman came back from the Speed Force, he referred to himself as Batman, the Red Death, where he would easily and brutally kill Gotham's rogues. All the while, Barry's consciousness is begging him to stop inside of him. It's kind of like a nightmare, this version. Definitely a nightmare. Number 4, Azrael. Right after the 1993 Nightfall story, when Batman got his back broken by Bane, just absolutely wrecked, he decided to pass the Batman mantle right on to not Dick Grayson. No, instead he chose Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael. His run on Batman wasn't the same as Bruce's. I mean, for starters, Azrael's methods were pretty violent and quite irresponsible. In all fairness, he was capable of defeating Bane with his new tricked out batsuit, but this guy thought that he was actually an all-round better Batman and a permanent successor rather than a replacement. Got news for you, pal. So once Bruce did recover, he had to force Azrael to leave the position. Even the style changes were quite drastic. Azrael made more than a few changes to the suit. Now it's black and yellow, this metallic armor, and then he added some other gadgets like claws, dual mag weapons, and of course, a cape. Just to, because he's a hero, he needs a cape. Number 3, Terry McGinnis. The year is 2039, and by this point Bruce Wayne has retired from the crime-fighting life. But meanwhile, Project Cadmus director Amanda Waller was out in search of a replacement, beginning with Project Batman Beyond. A major key element was using Batman's blood samples left over from his altercations, the OG Batman. That, mixed with some nanotech solutions, we now can make the DNA of Bruce Wayne. The future, how lovely. So Amanda found the Warren McGinnis household with Warren and Mary, and the couple was psychologically identical to Thomas and Martha Wayne. Perfect. So when they thought they were going in for a flu shot, they didn't know they were actually about to be the new parents of a new Batman. Amanda almost had both of them taken out to, encourage the lonely road of the Caped Crusader growing up, but thankfully she scrapped that idea. Because we don't need the same origin story, Amanda. Like, give the kid a minute to figure it out. Like, they don't have to. We don't need to. Turns out you can't avoid fate still, because down the road in Terry's teenage years, his father ended up getting killed, and Terry believed that it was actually the corrupt CEO Derek Powers behind all of it. So he got the help of Bruce Wayne, who was part of the merger with Derek Powers naturally. Then after facing off against the Joker's gang, Terry realized that Bruce was in fact this original Batman. So Terry stole his batsuit and was determined to find justice himself. The Beyond suit is just awesome. Rocket boots, claws, cloaking device. The red and black, I mean, you can't get any better than that. Number 2, Batman. Coming from Earth 43, Batman is, well, he's just that. He's Batman who doubles down as a vampire. Nice. We see him for the first time in Batman and Dracula Red Reign. His origins are the same for the most part, how he became Batman because of his parents, all that jazz. That's the same. But then when he's patrolling one night, he starts to find victims all with the same injury. Their throats have been just slashed apart. Who could have done this? Why, Dracula himself, that's who. He gets help from a rogue vampire named Tanya, who was once part of Dracula's posse. And Batman is so wild, this guy willingly gets bitten by a vampire to become one, so then he can take on Dracula. Whatever it takes to get the job done, I respect that a lot. And finally, number 1. Batman, the God of all knowledge. The Mobius chair made its first appearance in New Gods issue 1, and the chair itself was created by Mobius, aka the Anti-Monitor. He gave the chair to Metron, but when Metron took his eye off the prize for a minute, Batman ended up becoming the God of all knowledge for a short time. What happened was Wonder Woman grabbed Metron with her lasso, yanked him right off, and then before boom tubes were summoned or anything like that, Batman just took that chance that he had and jumped on the chair. Musical chair style. Then the Dark Knight becomes the bright light. The whole team at this time is fighting Darkseid, and Batman's just floating in the background, just trying to figure out the universe. He's just searching for solutions via the cosmic realm. It's pretty spectacular. Things took a jump to overdrive when he also received a power ring. I thought he was a good detective before, but now, I mean, that's just OP. Kicking off the list at number 10, the Nail. Created by Alan Davis, this version of Superman is Amish. Hot start, that's right. After he survived the destruction of Krypton, baby Kal-El was then sent to Earth in order to survive. The origin story for Superman gets a little strange when Martha and John Kent got a flat tire before departing for Smallville that day. Hence the name The Nail. Now we're putting it together. There we go. So the lovebirds end up staying in for the night. Martha says she's in the mood just to stay home, and John agrees. So now instead the super infant was found by an Amish couple. Now he's raised a good lad, but he's disconnected from the world. He's churning butter, not checking Twitter. He has no clue he's a Kryptonian. So in turn we get to see a Justice League with no Superman, and the world is a hot mess. Lex salvaged Kal-El's spaceship after he landed, so he used that tech to create an evil version of Jimmy Olsen. But when Super Jimmy is fighting the Justice League, the fight moves to Amish Kal-El's backyard, and that's when he discovers his true powers. He always had a feeling he was superpowered, he just didn't really know. So he bids farewell to his Amish folks, and then he unleashes the power of a god. What a day. Number 9. Injustice Superman. This comic run began back in 2013. Injustice Gods Among Us issue 1. Brought to us from the minds of Tom Taylor and Jeremy Rapak, comes this dark alternate reality where Lois Lane was kidnapped by the Joker. So he goes on this hunt with the help of the Justice League, tearing submarines apart, looking for his love, but as issue 4 begins, so do the streams of our tears. Lois Lane gets killed, and in turn Superman goes bat insane. He couldn't even stick around. He gave the body to Wonder Woman, and then zoom, he just flew off. Green Lantern tried to talk to him a little bit, saying, you know, you're hurt, you're angry, yada yada yada, just slow down. But Superman wasn't having it. He had something better on his mind. Batman's face says it all during this scene. Superman tells Batman during his dark ruling days that he learned the idea of enforcing peace through fear from Batman himself. I see no lie here. Number 8. Kingdom Come Superman. Shifting over to an alternate reality with an older Justice League, this Superman isn't as ruthless, but take that with a grain of salt. Kal-El of Earth 22 made his first punch into DC Comics with Kingdom Come issue 1. Now this is a version where Lois Lane still did perish, only before her untimely demise she made Superman promise to her that he would not kill the Joker in retaliation, so a little bit different this time. So he followed through and simply had the clown arrested. But this new superhero named Magog made their debut, and then they in turn ended up killing the Joker. Magog was obviously put on trial because, you know, killing's bad and all that stuff, but he was acquitted. The general public was like, oh, the Joker? Yeah, that guy was horrible. Thanks, great work. I could take the bus without having a panic attack now. Lovely, sounds wonderful, keep it up. Superman had to then rethink a lot after this. I mean, the public is now okay with killing villains. What does this world even come to? He's been letting these guys live, and in turn they've broken free over and over again, and then continued killing innocents over and over again. So he then just disappears to the Fortress of Solitude for a bit, observing without intervening. Now he did return less than a decade later, but the world had fallen into a societal depression. So with a new suit, older Clark Kent returned to the League, ready to once again enforce a code of ethics. Number 7. Calvin Ellis. When a comic book hints at a past president of the United States, it's usually pretty comical. For example, in Harley Quinn and Her Gang of Harleys issue 5, we meet Harley Sin, and her father looks and acts a little bit like Donald Trump. It's a ride. Now Calvin Ellis, on the other hand, was written by Grant Morrison to be based off Barack Obama and Muhammad Ali. So a much better person and role model, I'd say, just right off the bat. Earth 23 Superman President Ellis made his first appearance in DC Comics with Final Crisis issue 7. Kal-El was raised by the Ellis family, teaching him to always stand up for himself no matter what, and to fight for what he believes in no matter what bullies stand in your way. Little more optimistic and useful than the Amish family, I'd say, just a tad. Can I churn butter? Or can I like save people? No? Just churning butter? Alright, great. Number 6, Ultraman. Coming from Earth 3, originally Earth 2 in the comics, Ultraman is the evil version of Superman. Always fun, even if it's dark. Appropriately named Clark Luthor, he gets more power the more kryptonite he's exposed to. So if you see him dipping some crystals and licking them, you know, you gotta hit the deck. And the design is pretty much the same, only instead of a hopeful S on his chest, Ultraman rocks a U. The angrier Ultraman gets, the stronger he also gets. So usually a play on opposites are fun in comics. This one's just borderline terrifying. Number 5. Red Sun Superman. Superman Red Sun was released in 2003 from the mind of Mark Millar, part of the Elseworlds imprint. And we ask, what if Superman had been raised in the Soviet Union? I just watched Black Widow, we saw like a Russian Captain America, great stuff. Now we're talking about Russian Superman. That's why we're here, folks. Let's do it. The ship lands on a Ukrainian collective farm instead of Texas, and this idea had been floating around in Millar's mind since he was a 6-year-old. Back when he read Superman issue 300, it showed the USA and the USSR rushing to claim the fallen Super Son when he landed in neutral waters. Now, Mark Millar always wondered what it would be like if the other guys ended up getting to him first, an idea that subsequently earned Millar an Eisner Award nomination in 2004 for Best Limited Series, so you must check it out. Number 4. Superman Parallax. In Superman Volume 4, Issue 29, written by Keith Champagne, we see Superman on the search for missing children from Metropolis, but when Superman follows a lead, he's greeted from fear himself at an abandoned hospital. Parallax and Superman fight it out, but realizing he has no other choice, Superman offers himself up to the Dark Force. The only being that can save Earth at this point after is Sinestro, a powerful alternate, perhaps one of the scariest. You be the judge. Number 3. Lara Lane Kent Supergirl. This next version of Supes looks a lot like the version that we're going to get in the new Flash movie, so I had to throw her in there to get the gears spinning a bit. She's the daughter of Superman and Lois Lane. She appeared for the first time in Injustice Gods Among Us Year 3 storyline. Now, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, we learn that Lois Lane is indeed pregnant, and the following sequels would have shown us a world without Lois. So perhaps this Flash film will show us this bright alternate world where Batman has killed the Joker and Supergirl grows up with both of her parents' guidance. She looks pretty badass too. Now, these are just set photos, but the similarities are wild. To see for yourself, check out Injustice Year 3, starting with issue 6 or 7. I think she comes in around there. Number 2. Superboy Prime. This version of Superman has more powers and less weaknesses. I'm talking immunity to kryptonite and magic. He first appeared in DC Comics Presents issue 87, where Kal-El landed on Earth and was discovered by Jerry and Naomi Kent while they were on a hike in the New England seacoast town. They named him Clark, although Clark Kent was the name of a popular comic book hero, Superman. So yeah, he already existed on this Earth Prime. Now, Clark grew up and later attended a costume beach party, which I gotta say, tights plus sand, really? It's not the best idea, I don't know. They went to get a glimpse of Halley's Comet by the beach. It sounds great. Clark even dressed up like Superboy, although he was being teased. And then all of a sudden a tidal wave hits, a portal opens, and the Superman pops out from another dimension. Now at the same time, Clark's powers manifested and he quickly learned what to do with them in the moment. Superboy followed that Superman back into the portal to his reality. Unbeknownst to him though, he would never come back. That is until he decides to later punch reality apart. Number 1, Superman Prime. Superman of the 853rd century. He's literally a living extension of the sun at this point in time, so we gotta finish with him. He left Earth way back in the late 21st century once everybody he cared about passed away. Okay, he's like, oh, she's dead? Peace. What about the millions of others you could help? I don't know. There's other people. Meet other people. Go on Hinge. I don't know. He traveled beyond space and time after that, literally reaching heaven and hell, and he made his first appearance in DC 1 Million issue 4. So after soaking up the sun for 15,000 years straight, Superman obtained new abilities. He's more powerful than the gravitational pull of a collapsing star, and is many, many times faster than the speed of light. He's so powerful that he has some energy to spare. One of those new abilities is to share his power with others. A small amount, but still, that's far beyond any other metahuman at that point ever. You thought Superman was godlike before. This guy can literally smell you across the universe. And that's not even a joke. It's called superhuman olfaction. It's a real thing. He can smell trouble across black holes.
Number 10, Iron Goblin. Iron Goblin was a version of Tony that was kind of combined with Green Goblin through being exposed to the Goblin serum in order to save his life. This saved him from the spider virus, but also made him insane like Norman Osborn. This version of Tony Stark ultimately decided to sacrifice himself for others, not wanting to completely lose his sanity, and as a means of making amends for all the bad that he had done in his life prior to becoming Iron Man. As Iron Goblin, he wielded the Ebony Blade, attempting agreeing to buy some time for the Resistance to escape from the Spider Army on Spider Island, which if you didn't know is all part of Battle World, Secret Wars, all that good stuff. Number 9. Old Iron Man. This version of Tony Stark is actually the original from the comics who died after it was revealed in the Crossing event that he was actually evil. Dun dun dun! This version of Tony was a sleeper agent for Kang the Conqueror who had brainwashed him into basically becoming evil and becoming a villain. Even the Avengers couldn't stand up to Iron Man alone here. They recruited a younger version of the hero from the past to join them in their fight against older Iron Man. Unfortunately, this only resulted in younger and less experienced Tony getting his butt whooped and nearly being killed by his older self. In the end, older Iron Man was defeated when he basically saw the light and decided to return to the side of good, sacrificing himself and also creating a chest plate before doing so in order to stabilize his younger self, who would then go on to take his place. That's a real thing that happened. The Crossing, what a time. Number 8. Superior Iron Man. While this is still Tony Stark from the main continuity, Stark also kind of erased this version of himself from his brain in order to... This is so complicated, I love it. While this is still Tony Stark from the main continuity, Stark also kind of erased this version of himself from his brain in order to protect important information from falling into the hands of Hammer's director, Norman Osborn, at the time during Dark Reign. So, for that reason, I'm gonna count him, because he kind of erased this version of himself, even though it all happened in main continuity. Superior Iron Man, or Evil Tony Stark, was created during the events of Axis, when heroes and villains had their alignments flipped. So heroes became villains and villains became heroes. It was a weird but overall fun time in terms of what the characters got up to. Tony managed to shield himself from having his alignment return to normal and, in secret, kept his alignment evil. This version of Tony had no moral code holding him back, and at one point almost successfully took over San Francisco with the creation of a phone app and a little bit of extremis. True story. Well, maybe a lot of extremis, because it went into the water supply. But still, I think it's impressive if you can be like, here's an app, it's free, now it's $100 a day! That's crazy. Sorry, $99.99. Because that's a more appeasing price to the eye. Did you know? Number 7. Iron Man 2.0. This was a name that Rhodey took up later on as a version of Iron Man who served the government, but Tony Stark's BFF James Rhodes actually took up the mantle of Iron Man way before that in the comics as well, back when he was known just as Iron Man. Of course, with this being an alternate list, I thought just calling him just Iron Man might be confusing, so I took the later editorial name that was used in the comics when he was Iron Man another time. Rhodey ended up taking over as Iron Man actually way back in the 80s in the comics, after Tony's alcoholism was getting in the way and making it difficult for him to act as a hero responsibly. And Rhodey actually stayed as Iron Man for quite some time, while Tony took time off to relax and recover. Rhodey was an impressive Iron Man, but would eventually be forced to give up the mantle due to headaches that he suffered as a side effect of the suit not being properly calibrated to his brain patterns. Which honestly, I feel like if you're taking over as Iron Man, that should probably be a step that happens. Like, it's kind of rude that Tony didn't think about that. These headaches made him overly aggressive and irritable, forcing Tony to reclaim the mantle once more, because it was too dangerous, but he'd be Iron Man again later, so yay! Number 6. Iron Man 2020. This version of Iron Man is the brother of Tony Stark and the legitimate child of Howard and Maria Stark, because as we'd later find out, Tony was adopted. But before that happened, they had Arno. Arno had to be hidden away for years because he was sick and in danger, but once that was somewhat resolved, it's kind of a long story, Tony ended up learning of his existence and reached out to meet his brother. Arno Stark is also known for his brilliant intellect like his brother. In fact, he has even claimed to be smarter than Tony in the past, which I don't know, but I personally think that it could be true. Arno successfully modified the Extremis virus, attempting to turn it into a cure-all, and at one point using it to increase the Hulk's intelligence dramatically. Arno was also convinced at one point while operating as Iron Man that the only way to ensure peace between AI and organic life forms was to seize control of both sides' minds. Fortunately, he was stopped in this pursuit by his brother, Tony Stark. And I think now he's just like living in some sort of simulation that Tony put him in to just make him feel like a hero while he's like, I'm just gonna do this while we figure out how to not have you be around and be kind of evil. That would be good. Arno just thought he was doing what was best. I don't know what's wrong with that. Number 5. Dr. Anthony Stark. This version of Tony Stark only makes a brief appearance in the comics, having appeared less than a handful of times and making his first appearance in All New X-Men Annual Issue number 1. He hails from the reality temporarily numbered 591, not an official number just yet. Here Tony Stark has become Sorcerer Supreme of the entire galaxy in this alternate future of the year 2099. He discusses the blend and interchangeability of both science and magic. It seems as the years passed for this Tony, he only became even smarter, wiser, and more mystical. Neat. Number 4. MCU Iron Man. Iron Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was the one who managed to put a stop to Thanos once and for all. He created a gauntlet capable of handling and wielding the awesome power of the Infinity Stones, and was also the one to discover time travel. Well, to discover a version of time travel that actually worked. Banner was close, of course, but I don't think either he or Scott Lang would have gotten there in time without Tony Stark's breakthrough aha moment. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well, Tony Stark is the main creator of Ultron. While this ended up overall being a bad move on his part as Ultron became a supervillain, the accomplishment of creating an AI that powerful and complex is still really impressive. And without Ultron, we'd never have gotten Vision. This version of the character, played by Robert Downey Jr., also really helped to skyrocket Iron Man's popularity in the comics and around the world. RIP MCU Iron Man. You will be missed. Number 3. Iron Lantern. I'm really happy that this is the amalgamated version of this name that we went with instead of Green Man, which is less exhilarating by comparison. Green Man. Iron Lantern is a hero who comes to us from the Amalgamverse, and unsurprisingly, he is a mashup of DC's Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, and Marvel's Iron Man, Tony Stark. His name is Harold Hal Stark, and he gets his powers from a suit he made using a battery that he found amidst the wreckage of an alien ship. I love amalgam characters. Number 2. Iron Hammer. Stark Odinson is the version of Tony and Thor who hails from Warp World. Warp World was created when Gamora folded the universe in half using the power of the Infinity Stones. She then sealed these blended souls within the Soul Stone. While everything would be set right, this version of the universe was still allowed to continue to exist and kind of made its own thing, which I'm happy about because Warp World is pretty cool. Iron Hammer has both the ingenuity and brilliant armor of Tony Stark, as well as the Asgardian strength, immortality, and hammer Mjolnir of Thor Odinson. Number 1. Infamous Iron Man. Controversial opinion possibly, but I think Victor Von Doom is the most powerful of all of the Iron Mans. Doom took up the mantle of Iron Man following the events of Civil War II, which saw Tony left in a coma as a result of a fight with Captain Marvel. Dr. Doom, after the events of Secret Wars, had been looking to turn over a new leaf, and had decided to ally himself with Tony Stark as such, which also meant fighting on his side during Civil War II. In his honor, Doom took up the mantle of infamous Iron Man and proved himself to be one of the most capable versions of the hero that we've ever seen. Honestly, I feel like Doom as any hero or villain would be so powerful. I just love Dr. Doom. I don't know, spoiler alert, I love Dr. Doom. You already knew that. When this happened, even the villains knew they needed to be on high alert, gathering to discuss an alliance as they assumed this would be the only way to protect themselves against infamous Iron Man, only to have Doom drop in on the meeting and make quick work of, well, pretty much all of them. Infamous Iron Man was great, and honestly, it was too short-lived. Come back, infamous Iron Man, come back to us. Number 10. Rancor. Rancor is the descendant of Wolverine who hails from the Earth of 691. She first appeared in the original Guardians of the Galaxy series in issue number 8. When she was just a teenager, she battled her own father and defeated him by clawing out his heart. Yikes. She then took over the planet Haven and decided to take prisoner the human population of that planet, turning them into her servants against their will. She would cross paths and play villain to the original Guardians of the Galaxy team initially, but they would end up defeating her, this time around at least. Her powers are similar to Wolverine's, being that she is his descendant. As a ruler, she also has other warriors at hand who are willing to fight for her, although she herself is also a capable and skilled fighter. Number 9. Albert. Albert was an android created to destroy the real Wolverine by Donald Pierce. He came from a kind of wacky time in comics and also worked with LCD, another android who resembled a little girl. Like I said, it was an interesting and strange time. In the end, both LCD and Albert would go rogue, deciding not to complete their mission as they developed their own free will and thought and decided they didn't want to die. In killing Wolverine, they likely would have been forced to self-destruct, which they just were not into. Albert the android has powers very similar to Wolverine, though he doesn't self-heal. But hey, he's an android, so he can be rebuilt or patched up in most cases if he's harmed. He also has the fighting prowess to almost match Wolverine of 616. Almost. And also possesses a genius level intellect. Supposedly. Number 8. Wolverine Earth 811. The Wolverine of Earth 811 is interesting as it has been implied that his powers, while similar to the version of Wolverine from Earth 616, could have actually just been a result of human evolution, with him potentially being a descendant of a small group of ancestors known as the Moon Clan, who hid when the Celestials first arrived at Earth, avoiding any of their genetic experimentation. Despite these potential origins, Wolverine was still considered a mutant when the Sentinels took over, as he hails from the reality of Earth 811. And of course, Earth 811 is the reality of the Days of Future Past. He was the Wolverine to help Magneto rescue Scarlet Witch, but unfortunately she died during that attempt, and Magneto ended up paralyzed from the waist down. Wolverine would go on to join the Resistance and become a leader among them, so he not only brings with him his own abilities, but influence over the resistant forces located on his Earth in his reality. Number 7. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy is the son of Wolverine from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, though Jimmy wouldn't know he was Wolverine's son until his mutant powers manifested. His powers are similar to his dad's, but Jimmy is also bonded to one of the poisons, a kind of symbiotic alien creature that typically takes over their hosts. However, after their leader died, Jimmy found a way to control his poison. While bonded to his poison, Jimmy also has spider-like abilities and can shapeshift, turning his claws into tensile, goo-like tendrils, or extremely elongated spikes. Whatever he prefers for the day. Number 6. X-24. X-24 was a clone of Logan made to defeat the old man version of him and recapture the clones who had escaped. He was powerful enough to take on both Old Man Logan and Laura Kinney at the same time, and Logan pretty much dies trying to fight him in the end, and X-24 is even then only killed after X-23 is forced to shoot him with an adamantium bullet that Wolverine was actually saving for himself to end his own life. X-24 is one tough dude in this movie. He is a version of Logan whose rage is more tapped into and unleashed. What's more, he was engineered to be comparable to Logan in terms of his power level, but in peak physical condition. Considered to be like Wolverine, but as he was in his prime. Number 5. Gorgon. I always forget that Gorgon was also Wolverine, but him being one of Norman Osborn's dark recruits and carrying the mantle would definitely make him one of the most powerful alternate versions of Wolverine around, because Gorgon is a pretty powerful and deadly guy. Even if, as we learned during the Otherworld tournament in Ten of Swords, he isn't immune to the seduction of rock sirens. Gorgon is a masterful fighter and a powerful mutant who also has the ability to turn his opponents to stone, hence his name. Gorgon. He is a deadly force to be reckoned with, and I personally feel bad for all of the folks who have to challenge him whenever he's working security for the mutants of Krakoa. A lot of those people just are getting maimed left, right, and center. Ugh. Number 4. Daken. Daken, or Akihiro, is a deadly member of the Wolverine family, who spent his time as Wolverine when he was on the Dark Avengers. It was during this time that Daken attempted to take the Muramasa blade for himself to boost his power. He planned on having it bonded to his skeleton and coating his claws in it, and he wanted it so he could basically go kill Romulus. Remember Romulus, everyone? Whatever happened with that? He was successful in bonding the Muramasa blade to his claws, but didn't get to hold on to that power permanently. He would go on to battle and defeat both Scar and the Punisher, in fact seemingly killing Frank Castle, who would then go on to become Franken Castle for a time. One of Daken's most powerful abilities is his pheromone control, which can allow him to alter his opponent's mood. This is actually how he won against Scar, using pheromones to calm Scar down, which caused him to then transform in a way where he was just more chill. Number 3. Laura Kinney. Despite not even being an exact clone of Logan, X-23 is still one of the most powerful versions of Wolverine around out there. She became Wolverine in the all-new Wolverine series. Even today, it's more the mantle and look that Laura is known for, with both her and Logan currently using the same name, Wolverine, on Krakoa. So there are two Wolverines technically within the same continuity now. More recently, Wolverine was chosen to go on a mission in inside the vault, along with Darwin and the resurrected Sync. The three were brought in to do so because of their extraordinary abilities and the fact that Sync could, in effect, use both of their powers himself. As we saw in issues 18 and 19 of the 2019 X-Men series, time moves differently in the vault, and in the end the mission ended up taking, for them, hundreds of years before they actually managed to complete it and get out. But despite aging, Laura did not slow down. Even in the old woman Laura future, where her cells were beginning to break down due to her being created originally from genetic engineering, Laura still proved to be a badass, using her last bit of time alive to defeat Doom and free the people of Latveria. Basically all around, X-23 is just like the best. She's so cool. Number 2. Dark Claw. Dark Claw is a combination of Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman, hailing from the Amalgam Comics universe. So yeah, you know he's OP. He's not only got a powerful regenerative healing factor, but is a master fighter, martial artist, and detective who also happens to have super enhanced senses. Imagine a master detective who is also a master tracker. There is no crime or mystery that he could not solve. Dark Claw is also known for being hyper intelligent besides, so he's basically got the whole package. He's also super wealthy in this reality as well, so he's got money to back up his vigilante antics, helping him to acquire high level tech and giving him access to various different gadgets, as well as his own Clawcopter, which this character has in place of a Batmobile. If you're both Wolverine and Batman, does that mean you just have like unlimited plot armor? Because I feel like both of those characters can never die just because they're so popular, so I feel like Dark Claw would be pretty unstoppable. Number 1. Old Man Phoenix. Obviously, one of the most powerful versions of Wolverine around has to be the one from the alternate future of King Thor, Earth 14412. Here, Wolverine goes on to become the Phoenix after seemingly dying along with everyone else on Earth at the hands of Loki. The Phoenix, however, chose him, and because of that, he lived again and was given an unimaginable amount of cosmic power. Logan mostly used this power to fend off villains, including Ultron and Loki, and to keep the Space Stone out of Loki's hands. Many years later, as Old Man Phoenix, he would team up with King Thor to protect the Earth from Dr. Doom, after it was given new life again. Doom in this reality was also immensely powerful, and although Logan could not be killed in battle, he chose to sacrifice himself to give Thor the power to defeat Doom, imbuing his hammer Mjolnir with the Phoenix Force. However, even after seemingly giving up his life here, he would still somehow end up being resurrected. Because Phoenix. Number 10. Last Gun on Earth. While he doesn't make it to the end of this tale in Marvel Universe vs. the Punisher, he does end up managing to stand his ground against the Hulk tribe, which is pretty impressive. For those who aren't familiar with the Last Gun on Earth universe featured in Marvel Universe vs. the Punisher, everyone is pretty much turned into a after a virus breaks out. It turns people into violent criminals should they become infected. Well, Moon Knight manages to be one of the lucky few to survive his confrontation with the Hulk tribe. He does not manage to survive after being turned into a by Dr. Doom, who claims that he can cure people of the virus in exchange for being declared Emperor of the Earth, but instead turns everyone who wears one of his Doomstones into betraying those he promised to cure to. Unsurprisingly, this is Dr. Doom. Following that, Moon Knight is presumed to have been hunted down and killed by the Punisher. Number 9. What if Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires? This What If story takes place in the 1989 series of What If in issue number 24, all taking place on the alternate Earth of 9140. While Moon Knight doesn't make it out of this story alive, he does spend part of his life on this Earth as a vampire, which would likely only strengthen him, especially if he still had his connection to Khonshu and his powers from that. He'd really only be out at night as well, so he'd always be at peak power levels as Moon Knight, and he'd also likely see increased strength from being a vampire as well, although sadly not increased durability. Rats. Moon Knight was believed to have perished along with the other vampires when Wolverine, after having his humanity brought back to the surface by Stephen Strange's ghost, reads the Montesi formula. Sadly, all the vampires go bye-bye. Number 8. Marvel Cinematic Universe. While we don't yet know the extent of Moon Knight's powers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even following just episode 1, he seems to show a lot of potential, I'd say. The few scenes that we do see with Moon Knight, or more specifically that we get to see in the aftermath mostly of Moon Knight, show that he is a fierce and deadly fighter who doesn't just knock his opponents down, but even goes so far as killing them. True to the comics, he is brutal and bloody in terms of how he approaches dealing with those who stand against him, and even when completely outnumbered and in some cases unarmed, he manages to handily take down his enemies. I mean, he fought a bunch of armed opponents with simply a golden scarab at one one point. And I don't think that scarab would have made a great weapon per se. It's just a scarab as far as I know. I mean, I'm sure it's important, but I don't think it's like a secret weapon. I don't think it's that kind of important. It's a different kind of important. Number 7. Specter. Specter was a member of Khonshu's Moon Knights in the reality of Earth 51910, where mutants were forced to build the pyramids in Khonshu's honor. Wanting to be free of their bonds and the goddess of the moon, they plotted to assassinate Khonshu. A team of mutants met with Specter, who claimed to have defected. However, when the moon rose high, it didn't matter whether or not he had faith in his role as Khonshu's servant and knight. He was transformed into a werewolf and attacked the mutants. The mutants that survived were also transformed into werewolves and then sent back to their camp, bearing Khonshu's mark, to destroy the other mutants who wanted her dead. Some pretty dark stuff. Specter being a werewolf here also gives him added power and is also just pretty cool. So I was pretty excited to talk about it. I've always felt like it would make a lot of sense if there was stories where Mark Specter is like a werewolf, because there's that whole moon connection. Werewolves in the moon, Khonshu in the moon. Just saying. Connections. Number 6. Jessica Specter. I just really love the idea of Mark having a daughter to take up his legacy, which is what this short story featured in Marvel Knights Millennial Visions from the early 2000s is all about. It's just a one-pager with a follow-up page showing Jessica, Mark's daughter in this reality, as the new Moon Knight. Relegated to Earth 8753, this is the only glimpse we've seen into this universe, but I'd honestly love to see more if that ever happened. I'd also love to see an alternate reality where the main continuity daughter of Mark and Marlene, Beatrice, follows in her father's footsteps and becomes a hero. Mark in this reality is dying of cancer, and so his daughter, Jessica, a scholar and archaeologist, who is also an already skilled combatant and martial artist, decides to take up the mantle of Moon Knight herself, inheriting her father's wealth and his responsibility as an agent of Khonshu. Also, kinda gives me Lara Croft vibes, which, you know, I'm very much always here for. I love Lara Croft, so. As soon as I read that, I was like, this sounds like Lara Croft to me, and I approve. Number 5. Zombie Moon Knight. A lot of people interpret zombie versions of characters to be some of the strongest out there because, in a way, they're kinda immortal. Well, they're more immortal over on Earth 2149 if they happen to be a part of the zombie galacti armed with the power cosmic, which also Moon Knight is not. However, he's still a member of the undead, which is something. It's something. A lot of people count it really high. I count it moderately high, obviously, because this is number 5. It does mean that he is pretty insatiable when it comes to his hunger for human flesh, and pretty difficult to stop. But this relentless version of the hero still probably isn't the most powerful one around, because inevitably he does end up dying, being killed by Deadpool no less, even with all those zombie boosts. He did still have his moon-related powers, however, which Moon Knight is believed to have in the main continuity, but they weren't enough to save him from having his head removed. Number 4. Horsemen of Apocalypse. This version of Moon Knight appeared in Extraordinary X-Men and was an agent of Khonshu, like the 616 version we know so well. However, while we don't know the true name and identity of this Moon Knight, we do know they were a woman and were actually chosen to become Moon Knight by Khonshu after Mark Specter's death in this universe. This version of Moon Knight hails from the reality of Earth 16558. After the return of Apocalypse in the 21st century, this version of Moon Knight joined his cause, becoming one of his horsemen. In addition to her regular power set as Moon Knight, this version of the character would likely also have been augmented by Apocalypse and appears to have an extremely strong telepathic resistance. Number 3. Viloc Prime Moon Knight. This version of Moon Knight was, as they sound, turned into a Viloc Prime by a mutated version of the Legacy virus. He hails from the reality of Earth 8545 and made his first appearance in Exiles issue number 20. Being of the Viloc Prime would mean he would have powers granted to him similar to those of the mutant and self-soul friend of Cypher, Warlock, combined with his already impressive ability and power set, presumably that we see demonstrated by the 616 version of the character. This version of the character appeared in Exiles as a villain, as the Exiles came into conflict with him and his other fellow heroes turned Technarch. Number 2. Ultimate Moon Knight. While Moon Knight isn't typically associated with having superpowers, or at least it's sometimes left more ambiguous, this version of him definitely does appear to have superpowers. Now there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to say in the comments, but Amanda, he does have superpowers. Superpowers under the moon. And yes, sometimes that is a thing, but it really depends on who's writing this character, I find. It's just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Ultimate Moon Knight is quite durable and even managed to recover from being thrown into a coma. Also, I don't know how you just wake up from a coma, but that is some kind of power. He also exhibited levels of super strength, at least based on feats that we've seen him accomplish, but there is also just the fact that even in the Ultimate Universe, Moon Knight himself receives a mystical power upgrade as well from Doctor Strange Jr., the son of the original alternate version of Stephen Strange, who in this universe went MIA, and later on his son inevitably basically goes on to take his place. I'm like, let me tell you about the Ultimate Universe quickly. Number 1. Earth X. On Earth X, Moon Knight was unable to die, and it was believed his powers were not granted to him by the Egyptian moon god, Khonshu, but instead by vibranium dust, which he inhaled while lying on his deathbed in that fated Egyptian tomb that we also know from the Earth 616 continuity. He drifted away from those closest to him and became almost wraith-like in appearance due to his immortality. Oh yeah, he also ended up becoming immortal, thanks to the Reanimator Stone. So yeah, he's immortal. He helped the hero Mar-Vell secure it, defending it against the Sons of Set, as Mar-Vell wanted to use it in the paradise that he was trying to construct. When it was taken, Moon Knight died, but joined forces once more with Mar-Vell in the realm of the dead, aiding him in his fight against Death, whom he planned to defeat in order to create paradise. After the battle, Moon Knight was given a place in paradise as well. Because success. Also, he was super helpful, so I feel like he deserves that place.
And at 10, New Earth. Now, I'd like to say that technically New Earth is no longer the main continuity, since Prime Earth currently is, so I'm allowing New Earth Oliver to be on this list, okay? My list, my rules. New Earth Oliver is pretty badass, since in the 0 Hour storyline, after being thrust into another timeline where he stares at his own dead body, he gets pulled back and recruited by Batman to help in the fight against his once good friend Hal Jordan, who had recently gone mad thanks to Coast City being destroyed and then being possessed by Parallax. Oliver didn't want to believe it, but after seeing what Hal had become, he knew what he had to do. In the final battle, Oliver straight up shot Parallax in the chest, ending the battle and saving the universe. But Oliver was pretty messed up after this, understandably, because you know, he just killed his best friend. So Ollie returned to where he committed his first murder, because you know, that's great for your mental health, and swore off being a superhero, but obviously this wouldn't stick. Still pretty sick though. And at 9, Archer. Appearing in the animated movie Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, this version of Oliver Queen is the evil version who's a member of the crime syndicate. While he doesn't have much else going for him, being a match for the main Earth Oliver, he does have the moral advantage. You see, when you don't have a moral code, you can basically do anything, and that's what Archer experiences in this movie, even attempting to assassinate President Slade Wilson's daughter during a public speech. Yeah, it's pretty messed up. Dressing in red so he can hide all the blood, this guy is willing to kill whoever he has to in order to survive, gain more power, or even just have a bit of fun. And that puts him at an advantage over good Oliver, because he could easily put someone's life in danger as a distraction, and it would work. And at 8, Injustice. While the Dictator Superman universe version of Green Arrow dies brutally after accidentally shooting John Kent, the Earth 1 version of Green Arrow ends up being summoned by the Evilverse Batman to take down the crazy Superman. But in this reality, there is a pill that the Joker calls the Happy Pill, at least in the game, that increases their resistance to attacks, luckily making it slightly harder for Superman to kill this version of Oliver Queen. This pill does make him more powerful than his original and Archer counterparts, so that's why he's on this list, especially because everyone on Evil Man Earth is like, oh damn, Oliver Queen is back? How did that happen? I mean, like, it's pretty normal for Oliver, I guess. He's basically at this point one of DC's Jesuses, but still, I'm sure that made at least some people question Superman's true power, but it probably didn't last for long, because if it did, they would get their heads blown off or like heat vision through their skull. Do you think Superman plays golf with human heads? I'd like to think so. 4. And at 7, Goliath. Goliath is the Amalgam Universe version of Oliver Queen and Goliath. While not really an archer, Goliath does have the Marvel Universe's Goliath powers, including the ability to grow and shrink. What makes him part Oliver Queen is his relationship to Canary, which parallels to Goliath and Mockingbird's relationship in the Marvel Universe. First introduced in JLX number 1 in 1996, I'm sure you can see why Goliath would be a powerful version of Green Arrow. Actually, while learning about this character, I decided to move him up quite a bit, because being able to grow or shrink at will instead of needing to wear a suit like Ant-Man is certainly a power that is scary to deal with, especially with the basic invulnerability that he has thanks to Goliath. The only thing that really makes him Oliver Queen though is his name and his relationship to Canary, so that's why he's higher up on the list. And at 6, Roy Harper. Now, while Roy Harper may be younger and more naive than Oliver Queen, he does become quite the respectable superhero in his own right, and has gotten through some serious issues, including multiple substance issues, which is inspirational to say the least. While also being an expert archer, Roy is an excellent acrobat and has been shown as an expert mechanic and engineer, designing and building his own trick arrows as well as trick arrows for Oliver, not to mention additional weapons, robots, and defense systems. He's also been shown as quite the expert hacker, and was able to jailbreak his phone and give it voice recognition. Roy Harper invented Siri, guys. Aside from that, the Arrowverse version of Roy was also given a dose of Mirakuru and survived, turning him into a living weapon much like Slade Wilson. While the Mirakuru was in his system, Roy was able to punch through a shipping container that was bullet and explosion proof, not to mention the healing factor he gained, and the ability to punch through brick without ironically breaking a sweat. Although this came with its own set of issues, including anger management problems, which isn't good when your mentor has just sworn off killing. Not to mention the one time Roy in the comics had a Black Lantern ring in the Blackest Night storyline. Halfway through in at number 5, Flashpoint. Flashpoint Oliver is an interesting case here, because while he is on the side of good, he's more on the side of profit. Leading a band of ex-military operatives he calls the Green Arrows, Oliver runs a business where he steals advanced gadgets and weapons from villains and refurbishes them for military use, which honestly makes him pretty damn powerful. If he can not only acquire these weapons, but also if he used them, he could be considered one of the most powerful non-superpowered individuals in the Flashpoint timeline. But I also like to consider the fact that just because Barry's mom didn't die, Oliver isn't as much of a do-gooder as he is in the main timeline, or that just because Barry's mom didn't die, Bruce Wayne is the one who dies in the alley. It's incredible to me, honestly. This version of Green Arrow was introduced in Flashpoint Green Arrow Industries #1 in 2011, and this one is definitely on my read list. I'm probably gonna pull it up when I get home because this is really cool, even if it is slightly concerning. In at 4, Connor Hawke. Connor Hawke is the son of Green Arrow and Sandra Hawke, and takes over the Green Arrow mantle after his father's death. When introduced in Green Arrow Volume 2 number 0 in 1994, he appeared to just be a huge fan of the Green Arrow, but it was later revealed that, unbeknownst to Oliver, Connor was in fact his son. It feels fitting that it's my name now, honestly. And while he may share the same skills as his father, although less evolved, Connor does end up gaining a couple powers over his father, one of them being a healing factor, granted to him due to genetic mutations from Dr. Sivana, this giving him also a higher resistance to pain. This also allows him to stay at his prime with ease, much like Logan, and thanks to Connor's Zen training, he was able to develop a form of clairvoyance. This is the ability that gave him a vision of his father still alive, despite the world thinking that he was dead. See, he has a reason to be on this list other than us just sharing names, okay? Getting close to the end in at number 3, Blackest Night. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who are raised by Necron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before, but with their minds warped to serve Necron's purpose. Those with the ring have various powers, including a healing factor, aura recognition which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation which lets them extract the hearts of individuals they've slain and use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.01%, and they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten and would turn them into a Black Lantern upon death. Basically zombies with superpowers, so definitely not something to be laughing at. Penultimately, in at number 2, the Specter. While I really wanted to put this at number 1, I knew at least a few of you would be mad at me for it, so here we are at number 2. The Arrowverse crossover event Crisis on Infinite Earths had been in the process of being set up for a while, with the previous Elseworlds crossover basically just being one big commercial for it, and the seasons of the shows leading up to it mostly revolved around what would happen. One of these main issues was Oliver Queen's death, which shockingly was carried out in the first part of the crossover. After bringing Oliver Queen back to life with a Lazarus pit on Earth 19, John Diggle, his daughter from the future Mia, and Constantine all travel to Purgatory to retrieve his soul. But when he was about to go back with them, Jim Corrigan arrives with a way for Oliver to save everyone. This turns Oliver into the Specter, basically the most powerful being in the multiverse, or one of them at least, giving him the powers of God, allowing Oliver to reboot the universe with the help of the Paragons, and stopping the Anti-Monitor from securing the death of all Earths. He also ended up corrupting the Speed Force by empowering Barry, which resulted in the Speed Force dying for a time. This really should be number 1, but whatever. Finally, in at number 1, Brightest Day. After Hal Jordan absorbed the entity of life, he spread its power over multiple superheroes, some of who were Black Lanterns at the time. This included the Green Arrow, which fully resurrected him. And a white power ring is certainly the most powerful ring of them all. One ring to rule them all. being able to generate and use any color from the spectrum, since white light is all the other colors combined. This allows White Lanterns to in essence have near godlike abilities with all the colors. White energy blasts, force field generation, energy constructs, energy twins, ring duplication, mind alteration, wormhole generation, time travel, invisibility, resurrection, you name it and the White Lanterns can do it. The full extent of the white power ring is unknown, so honestly, this is the only thing I saw fit to beat the Specter if anything. I mean, the white power ring may not be able to reboot the universe, but hey, we don't know if it could. It can resurrect people, so why not resurrect planets, right? I mean, probably. Hopefully that's not too big of a leap in logic.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Lee Price. Making his comic book debut as Venom in Volume 3, Lee Price had a pretty rough life, before the symbiote stuff even. He was bullied, his father was horrible to him and his mother, so he burned the place down to the ground. Which is not a great way of handling the situation, but comic books, you know, what are you gonna do? He blamed the fire on a mutant boy with pyrokinesis, and when he grew up, he suppressed all of it. He actually believed down the road that his father had abandoned him and that the fire was actually caused by the mutant. He was in protective services after that point, and as an adult, he would join the Army Rangers, until he was injured in a mine explosion, which in turn left him without a few squad members and a few fingers. Discharged and left without any benefits, Lee had no choice but to accept a job from Mac Gargan to be a tough guy while the deal goes down between Black Cat's gang and Tombstone's gang. That's when he found the symbiote, or rather, the symbiote found him. Number 9. Ultimate Venom. Venom of Earth 1610, aka the Ultimate Universe, made his first appearance in Ultimate Spider-Man 33. Now the Ultimates are great for the most part. We see these major changes to the heroes we thought we knew, like Thor, for example, isn't a god this time around. Gwen becomes Carnage, and Wanda and her bro, they're close. They're closer than the other version, that's for sure. In this tale, Richard Parker and Eddie Brock Sr. were working together to develop a way to heal humanity. The symbiotic biosuit named Project Venom was underway. The project was adding up to be more than a two-man job, so they partnered up with Trask Industries for some help. The company eventually realized the potential of the symbiote and figured, let's just use it as a bioweapon and create super soldiers. Sounds good, let's do it. That ought to do something, right? Well, it did do something. When Richard and Eddie were on a plane to fight Trask in court, see, they had secretly created their own version and wanted to pull it out to prove ownership. But Eddie pulled the suit out a little bit too early while they were still flying, and that's how they all perished in the Ultimate Universe. As a student, Eddie Jr. began studying a sample of that same Venom project with Dr. Kurt Connors, and Peter took a piece to study himself. After Peter spilled a drop on his hand, he got the black suit makeover, cranking his powers up to 10. He was now untouchable, but when a robber shot another man, this triggered Peter. It reminded him of his Uncle Ben and what happened, so he went full Venom. He made an absolute mess. He lost the symbiote after getting entangled in electric cables on purpose. He wanted this thing to go. The only parts left were in his bloodstream, and also that other sample left at the lab, which yes, Eddie Jr. ended up finding. Number 8. Demon. Coming in hot from Earth 5101, Pavitar Prabhakar made his first appearance in Spider-Man India, issue 1. Pavitar moved to Mumbai with his Aunt Maya and Uncle Bim to continue studying. He got half a scholarship and was determined to keep the success train going. His best and only friend, MJ, Mira Jane, stood by his side all the while. He got his powers through an ancient ritual, which in my opinion is way cooler than a spider biting your hand mid-photo, you know? Nalan Oberoi, a crime lord of this alternate reality, used an amulet to get himself possessed by a demon. That demon was determined to hold the door open for other demonic forces. Pavitar, while being chased by bullies, ran into an ancient yogi who then gave him the powers of a spider. Which sounds great, but when you find out that this reality's Venom is a century-old demon stuck in an amulet, you get a little bit nervous for him. Demon Venom was freed by a cult called the Neo-Alvars, and once he was free, nearby towns were just obliterated. You know the rest. He had us in the name Demon, let's be honest here. Number 7. She-Venom. Anne Wang, aka She-Venom, will be returning in Venom Let There Be Carnage. Michelle Williams is set to return, of course, and she's been around in comics for a while. She first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man issue 375 back in 1993. She first met Eddie while at Empire State University, and she actually fell in love with him quite fast because, you know, he saved her life from a group of thugs. That ought to do it. So they get married, Eddie starts working for the Daily Globe, she was a lawyer, and everything sounds like a pretty fantastic household if you ask me. You know, until Venom Dark Origin issue 2, when she divorced Eddie after getting sick of his Spidey hatred. Once Eddie got the symbiote, Spider-Man asked for Anne's help. Any hot tips, favorite driving ranges? Come on, help a brother out here. So she explained some of his history and it did help. Spider-Man was able to meet up with him in issue 375 of The Amazing Spider-Man. But Anne followed in the background as well. She wanted to talk to Eddie and talk him down from this vendetta. Things were actually starting to cool off for a bit, and then these idiots show up to take everybody in. That doesn't happen, obviously. Instead, Anne is put in danger and Spider-Man helps Eddie save her. And then the two webheads make a deal. Later on in Venom Sinner Takes All issue 2, Anne was shot by the third Sin Eater and was bleeding internally. It wasn't looking good. Venom carried her away to a secret hideout, and the only way she could survive was if the symbiote attached itself and healed her, thus creating She-Venom. Number 6. Anti-Venom. When Eddie Brock and the symbiote did separate, you would think that would be the end of it, or something good at least. Well, in fact, without the symbiote, Eddie has to now live with cancer, which sucks, but he spent his days volunteering at the Feast Center, so he's trying. Something's happening, he's trying to make good. Martin Lee, aka Mr. Negative, used his powers to cure Eddie's cancer. Just Eddie? Like, I feel like there's a lot of other people we could help out, but okay. But in doing so, Lee accidentally infused the symbiote into Eddie's bloodstream, so the symbiote was fused into his white blood cells. In The Amazing Spider-Man issue 569, Anti-Venom is now born. It's just Venom with the opposite colors, essentially, with the white blood cells added in there. This version of the symbiote has phenomenal healing powers, as you would guess. It can create antibodies that cures any known disease or any impurities with your body. Now, the main difference between Venom and Anti-Venom is that Eddie Brock is now in full control. He's got two hands on the wheel this time around, and the symbiote lasted a few years in the comics, and in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 671 it was destroyed when it was used to cure the spider virus. Number 5. Gwenom. Hitting the page for the first time in Spider-Gwen Volume 2, issue 25, Gwenom, well, you can probably guess. Gwen Stacy turns to the dark side after she sees her father beaten into a coma from Rhino. Thing is, Matt Murdock gave the order. Yikes. She's out for blood, and this symbiote will make it a lot easier to shed it. But not if Frank Castle gets to them first. He actually killed Rhino right as Gwenom was gearing up to do it. Probably for the best that it didn't happen. She's actually out for everybody at this time, because then she breaks into the S.H.I.E.L.D. correctional facility to confront Cindy Moon, and she asks Cindy why she made this mutant spider in the first place. Cindy sees that she's upset, but she doesn't blame the symbiote. She knows that these are Gwen's words and thoughts, the symbiote is just shouting them. Cindy implores Gwen to let go of her anger towards Matt Murdock, which is easier said than done. Number 4. Venom 2099. Kron Stone, the older half-brother of Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, first entered comics in Punisher 2099. But 3 years later in Spider-Man 2099 issue 35, he becomes Venom. How did this happen? You're literally in the Spider family. What went wrong? Well, Kron was a bully. He was actually so horrible as a person that Miguel once tried to take him out, before all this jazz. So Kron gave the orders to try and have Jake Gallows and his family wiped out, but Gallows found out and beat Kron to the punch. So while he was laying there in a sewer after a knife wound, this black ball of goop suddenly brushed up against him and then engulfed him. The symbiote was different this time around though. See, it had acidic blood and saliva to help get the job done. Kron can also turn his body into a liquid. The guy can literally shapeshift, so of course Venom 2099 is on this list. Number 3. May Parker. Venom strikes the Parker family again, this time on Earth 9997. May Parker is quite unique when it comes to superpowers. In Jim Krueger's Earth X run from 1999, instead of keeping them a secret, she actually embraced it. I am Iron Man style, which is how I think I would handle powers, but realistically, I'm afraid of heights. I would retire in 5 business days tops. Matt Murdock trained her to use her spider sense like radar, and things were going well, until she became the target of a symbiote. That same symbiote that had been used by her father years before. See, Peter rejected the symbiote at first, so now it was a little upset, and it swore revenge on the Parkers. Any Parker. Doesn't matter what age, what generation. Venom doesn't take too kindly to rejection, so one day it left an older Eddie Brock and made its way to May. Thing is, when the symbiote did bond to May, her spider sense training came in handy and she was able to subjugate the symbiote and take control. Nice. This is why we all need a crime-fighting blind lawyer for guidance. Is it too hard to ask for? Number 2. Scorpion Venom. Matt Gargan was a private investigator hired by J. Jonah Jameson to find out just exactly how Peter gets those angles on the webhead. How does he get those TikToks? What is he doing? How does he get those boomerangs? They're always so good. Something's gotta be up, but every time Mac would get close, Peter's spider sense would tip him off and he would easily avoid him. It was kind of comical almost. So step 2 was, let's just pay Mac 10 grand and have him be the subject of an experiment involving animal mutations doctor Harley Sitwell. Then maybe we'll figure out how a wide lens works, perhaps. I don't know, that might be the trick. Obviously things go south, Mac becomes the villain Scorpion. Later on in comics during Marvel Knights, Scorpion was recruited by Norman Osborn and was sent to kidnap Aunt May, if anything were to happen to Osborn. Hey, if you don't get a text back, go steal that kid's aunt. Awesome, freaks. So whilst on the way to take Aunt May, the recently freed Venom symbiote felt this shared hatred towards Peter Parker, and the two bonded, creating Scorpion Venom. Just the absolute worst. You never want to bump into this guy. And finally, number 1. The Punisher. With the Disney What If series launching off this past week, I think it's only fair to include one of my favorite What If scenarios, also the goriest. This one comes from What If series volume 2, issue 44. Here we find the Venom symbiote taking over Frank Castle rather than Eddie Brock. Now I thought the Punisher was frightening before this. Oh boy. This was the most people the Punisher has ever in his life. You've been warned. This is a pretty brutal time. The symbiote can shoot webs, and in Frank Castle fashion, an unlimited amount of bullets also comes in handy. The symbiote tried to take over Frank's body, but Frank vowed to end his own life if that was the case. So the symbiote's like, damn it, alright, fine, fair.